the archangel Saint Michael. Do we have any Michaels here? The Michael is actually a question in Hebrew. Who is like the Lord? And interestingly, it's Michael who stands up against Satan and all those demons who dare to think that they are like the Lord. Because nobody is like the Lord. Nobody is equal to God. But Satan wanted to be equal to God and says, right, so you want to take on God, you have to answer to Saint Michael. And that's why now Saint Michael is the leader of the angelic hosts, the heavenly host. He stands up for the honor and glory of God. And anyway, so then the great fight happens, but before that, that happens, the great fight, and then we fast forward, so God creates the world, all the different animals, plants, trees, everything, and then finally he creates human beings, and human beings he has made in his own image and likeness. Now, the Trinity as a doctrine, which we were talking about earlier, and now it's the Trinity that's creating all this beautiful creation, all this beautiful world, is only revealed in the New Testament. True?
Yeah.
There's no revelation of the Father, the Holy Spirit, or the Son as such. It's just God acting. But in the Old Testament, there are a couple of little places where there's a hint that God is actually a community of persons. In the book of Genesis, it says, let us make man in our own image. Our image. And in the book of Genesis as well, with the story of the Tower of Babel, where again the sacred writer is grappling with the question of human pride and wanting to reach the heavens, but under our own steam. So we'll build a tower and get to heaven and reach the heavens. So heaven was symbolically the place of God. So we are going to be equal to God. Okay. And God says, let us go down and we will confuse them. Let us go down. So there's a hint of Trinity there. So anyway, God then makes man and woman. If you want to go into all that catechesis, John Paul II, I've got some YouTube videos there, and it's a bit heavier, but it's good to watch it on YouTube, because you can watch it, reverse it, and so forth. But he beautifully goes through all the different, at the beginning, the original solitude, the original nakedness, but there was no shame, the original unity that existed between man and woman, the original gift, there were 6 altogether, and eventually the 6th one is the original sin. What happens there? Well, there's a crossing of a threshold. But before that, there was some time where man and woman, Adam and Eve, were quite happy to love each other and to serve God in the Garden of Eden. And Eden, again, it's a symbolic garden. Name in Hebrew means delight, and also in Aramaic. And it's just, in other words, a place of delight. Adam and Eve had what we call the special gifts that they had, and we call them preternatural gifts. Preternatural gifts. I'm going to give you a little acronym to help you remember them. But preternatural gifts were lost because of their disobedience and eventually the committing of original sin. It's KIII. So, knowledge, immortality, integrity, impassibility. Oops, sorry. So these four gifts, the knowledge, right? The man and the woman knew what what to name all the different creatures. God brings them to the man to see what he would call them. This is in chapter 2 of the book of Genesis. And then we're told, but no suitable helpmate was found for him, for the man. And then, God creates woman. So knowledge is referring to his knowledge of the created world. God had infused this into our first parents. Immortality was the other gift that was lost. God did not make us for death. When we would do our time upon this earth, then we would be taken with him forever in heaven. So death entered in because of sin, and the original sin that first that came into existence sometime afterwards. And the death was firstly a spiritual death, and then secondly a physical death. The integrity is the gift of integrity refers to the command or the control of the soul over the body. Right now, none of us have that gift of integrity. It's gradually increased through virtue and the grace of God working within us, but it means we don't have complete control over our bodies, the soul. We are under the limitation of this world of space and time, but eventually when we have the gift of integrity, then we won't have bodily impulses that sometimes, or wishes or desires, that will lead us away from Christ. Our bodies will be under complete control of our soul. We will also have which part of that is the gift of agility, because when we have our glorified body, though this is not, Adam and Eve did not have this, the gift of agility with our glorified bodies, that we will be able to just move wherever we like, and by God's glorious power we could go to Perth or to the Northern Territory without having to drive there or ride our bicycle. It would be a very long bike ride, or fly there. We would just wish to go there and we would be there. Have you ever wondered, how does Mary and Jesus, how do they come into this world from heaven? They're in another world. They're in another dimension. Because of the complete mastery of their body and soul, they come and appear to whoever they want to on this world, and even sometimes two people or whatever at the same time. It's not a problem. It's part of the extraordinary properties of a glorified body. But the integrity, the control of the soul over the body, and then impassibility is the gift, meaning that we're free from suffering. Lovely gift, isn't it? We lost it. So anyway, we'll have questions to ask Adam and Eve one day. I know I'll ask a few questions, but we've got this, and when they chose the original sin, to commit original sin, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is. I think it's something to do, it is something to do with a knowledge, because it's the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, but so it's a knowledge of evil and a knowledge of goodness in a way that was different from the other knowledge that is in the ordinary sense of the word. And in the book of Genesis, when the man knows the woman, has sexual relations with the woman, it is described as a form of knowledge. And St. John Paul II actually brings this out in the Catechism. So when spouses love one another, it's a form of knowledge. And through that coming together, they come to know each other more fully. And that also then, in the generation, the procreation of a child, it actually brings about a full flowering of their own procreative powers and shows them what they're actually capable of doing. So I don't know what the original sin was, but if I had to have a guess, I would say it's something to do with sexuality. But I don't know that, obviously. I'm just having a guess. And it's there was something mysterious, something at the same time fascinating, but whatever it is, it attracted the curiosity of the woman first, and then later of the man, because he chose to take part in it, and then they went from there. Okay.
Can I just say that the value, because I agree with you that it's probably based on using the gift before God intended.
Say that again?
It's probably a case of using the gift before God intended, because by all means of that, it's something beautiful that God intended.
Absolutely, yes. That's why I say the gift of the knowledge of good and evil, something to do with sexuality, does not mean sexuality is bad, but something twisting it, some kind of a revelation, because after that knowledge boundary, now the original nakedness without shame is now shameful. We all need to wear clothes. If it weren't the case, the modesty, we would feel a certain shame in each other's gaze. Now, that wasn't part of God's plan. The body is actually something beautiful and holy. So I just offer that as a possible explanation, but I don't. It's just an opinion. There's no reason why I say that, except that our sexuality is one of those mysterious aspects of our being that is at the same time spiritual and physical. And John Paul is very much grappling with this in that theology of the body. Thank you. It's, I know we need hot water, or else we won't have a cup of tea. But we won't have boiling water anyway for a cup of tea. So God, what we see in the way He created the world too, like the 7 days or the 6 days of creation, He creates with an order. And that's part of the way in which God unfolds His loving plan. He creates with an order. And then finally on the 7th day, the day or the 6th day, man is created with the beasts, but man is created in his own image and likeness, which means he reflects this image of God. What makes man actually reflect something of who God is, which the animals do not have. And St. John Paul II says that when the man was created originally by himself, when he wasn't yet, the image of God wasn't yet in perfection in him. It was only with the creation of woman that he could now relate to another one of his own kind and form a community of persons that the image of God had actually come to its proper perfection in him. Up to that point, he wasn't really in the perfection, in the image of God. So why? Because God is three persons. One nature, three persons, and they're relating to each other. So whatever is going to be in the image and likeness of God must have a relational ability. Now, I know what some might be thinking, well, don't animals relate to one another? They do, but not with that same loving knowledge. And what distinguishes human beings from animals is that we are able to study ourselves as our own, the object of our own study. Animals do not study each other. So it's only human beings who can actually enter into a proper relationality, and that ability makes them in the image and likeness of God. Again, some might object and think, well, what about disabled persons who are severely deformed, who haven't got that ability? They are still human beings. What's deformed is their body or something like some part of their body, but the fact is they're still human beings. So they are still, even though they are disabled in that way in their ability to relate, once they eventually have glorified bodies, they will be able to relate as anyone else would. But that just because they are limited in some way from relating doesn't make them any less human, and therefore lessen their dignity. The 7th day, God rests on His 7th day, and in that we are told, well, God stops creating. But has God actually stopped creating? No. I mean, these things are still beautiful, flowering and moving, and there's a cycle and generation. He is guiding it all. He's guiding it all. And some want to say that God has stopped creating. Now, maybe He stopped creating new species, I don't know. Other species have gone and into extinction and so forth. But I think God is still creating. And on the 7th day, what does it mean? Are we due for another break?
Yeah.
Okay, so Yeah, we have been. You know what? Let's have a. Well, let me tell you this bit, and then we'll stop for a break. Sorry, I got carried away. The what does it mean for God to rest on the seventh day? Well, it's not that, he's been working so hard, big sweat, and he's now sitting back on his deck chair with a beer in his hand, and just looking at these beautiful things he's made. It's God contemplating his created world. And why does God create this world? Because he wants to share his own goodness. God, who's almighty, all-powerful, only does good things out of mercy, out of love. He creates in order to share his splendor. Not because it gives him a kick or a buzz. He loves what he sees. And God saw that it was good. And God saw that it was good. In the book of Genesis, it's repeated 5 times for the first 5 days. And then the 6th day, and God saw that it was very good. Why do you think there's a very there? Because on the 6th day, he created man. So, on the 7th day, God stops creating, and he's now contemplating what he's made and how marvelous it is. So now, though, he's got this intelligent creation, not all the planets and everything, but human beings who can gradually come to recognize the Creator. And that's why then the Sabbath rest is instilled as a law to rest and to stop from your work. So the work in those days was to till the soil, so you're bending down, and then when you stand, Sabbath means Shabbat from the Hebrew, to stop, to cease, or to desist. And so you stop your work and you straighten up. So when you straighten up, you can look up to heaven and recognize the heavens, which is the symbolic place of the Eternal One, the Creator. So when you rest for man, it's not because God needs our worship, but because human beings need to rest and to be recreated. And this keeping of the Sabbath rest, now, there's a 3rd commandment there. The keeping of the Sabbath rest is meant to be a time of real rest physically. Traditionally it's often been going away from unnecessary physical work or servile work. But that needs to be tweaked for our own times, where we have so many people doing sedentary work and not necessarily working out in the fields. In a time when, the people are doing primary industry, basically farming and cultivating and so forth, the crops. Well, you've got people who are spending all their time in offices, for 40 hours a week. For them to go and recreate means maybe go and digging the garden and just getting in touch with nature, or getting your hands dirty with soil or whatever. But to do something different, something that recreates you, rejuvenates you inside. Okay, any questions on that?
Can I share something quickly?
Yes.
God created man, and then he had a better idea.
and that better idea picked the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Oh no, we need each other. Great. Well, let's have a break, and we'll and then we'll continue after that.
Just before we go, I might just give you your certificates. If your certificate's not here, it might be because someone might have missed a session or something like that. So if there's any discrepancies or whatever, just let me know and we'll sort that out. So Brian's not here, is he? Brian Barlow?
Can I take it?
Lynn? Oh yeah, sure. Thank you. Lynn? Yes, Lynn.
Thank you.
Robert?
Yeah.
Will you see them?